Do you have some Leica friends mocking you for your camera, but what can you do? Your money is enough to buy maybe only the grip of a Grail camera. But don't rush with that pile of sleeping pills. There might be a great camera for you to blend in. A camera that was hyped almost as much as M9 introduction. Fujifilm FinePix X100, the original classic, which is basically a grandpa to all your X Pros, XTs and XEs. So let's begin. What's up, visual rangefinder lovers? Welcome back to Aperture Value. It is a special one for me, partly because it took quite some time to complete. I've been using X100 for a couple of months now, so it is time for me to share the experience and thoughts about it. For better understanding, let's, as always, dig a bit back into history to understand what stood behind this awesome little gem. It's 2010, people everywhere singing Waka Waka, but in photography world, everybody was getting ready to see some fresh at Photokina. Major players are still only Canon and Nikon, DSLRs still rock, and it was cool to have the biggest ass camera possible. Olympus and Panasonic were playing with Micro Four Thirds format, while Sony was still raping what's left of Minolta. Now all the other brands were spinning in compact segment, because that was a thing in 2010. And from compacts it began. With Sigma DP1 starting the race of large sensor compacts, before 2010 Photokina world already saw APS-C DP2 and Leica X1, as well as Micro Four Thirds Olympus EP1 with Panasonic GF1. Sony introduced its NEX camera with first E-mount, while Nikon and Canon cared enough to make one only a few years later by introducing Nikon Coolpix A and Canon G1X. As for G1X, it is a quite good and affordable camera. You can check my review of it since I own one. Now all the cameras mentioned above were still complex and did not much resonate with more or less serious photographers. They were more like a best of a best thing for casual people with unlimited budget. It all changed with Fuji X100. Besides weird 3D shit going on, it was just a little camera sitting on a tripod at Photokina, but it instantly grabbed attention. Unique retro styling was totally different from big black shapeless DSLRs, as well as plasticky colorful compacts. It was a real camera with physical dials and metal body. Later, Olympus picked up this styling too with their OMD lineup. Also, Nikon released its retro style DF a few years later, so X100 was an influential blast in terms of looks. But only the looks wouldn't have made it revolutionary, right? Under the hood, it got a 12 megapixel APS-C sensor, which at the time was a lot. This sensor instantly got praised for its performance and for the great color. Fujifilm was already well known for color since they've started to work on their famous film simulations a long time before. First variations of which appeared in FinePix F700. You can learn more about the film simulations from the video I made before, I'll pop the link above. Besides sensor, X100 also sported an unusually fast 35mm equivalent Fujinon f2 lens. And of course, you can shit on hybrid viewfinder as much as you want, but you can't deny that by being first of its kind, it was a technological revolution. And of course, it was one of the main selling points for Fuji X100. People who were excited about Leica M9 now had an alternative which wasn't better or worse by all means, just different. And different is the perfect word to describe X100. It was a real deal for serious photographers. Unlike other quirky larger format compacts, it had a great build quality, duh, durable metal body, widest control possible, threaded shutter button, nice dedicated dials for aperture, shutter speed, exposure compensation, leaf shutter and a built-in ND filter. Fujifilm knew that being different and unique is so much better than just being superior on spec sheets. And I didn't joke about X100 hype. This camera was so good looking that I bet many didn't even care how was it as a camera. It does look good even today. It surely was inspired by the design of their own film Fujica cameras, showcasing their rich rangefinder heritage. Original X100 came only in silver, but there was a limited black version as well. Starting from X100S, black and silver are both standard. The styling did so well that they ditched FinePix naming and introduced Fuji X series XF mount with similar retro-style bodies like X Pro 1, XT1, and so forth. Unlike competitors, X100 had so much options for personalization like hand grips, thumb grips, soft release buttons, leather half cases, plates with wooden grips, beautiful leather straps, various lens hoods. Anybody could find something to make it look even better. Over the time, so many different accessories accumulated that Some are even hard to identify nowadays. So to answer the question, I have no idea what's my head case. It came with a camera and does not have any branding, so if you want the same one, good luck. Moving on to controls and ergonomics, there's not much to complain about, especially compared to the other compacts. All the essential controls are at the tips of your fingers. Fuji managed to cleverly get rid of mode dial while keeping the control flawless and intuitive. The addition of ISO dial in later iterations made it even more perfect. The viewfinder lever switch is beautiful and just in the right spot to reach purposefully but not accidentally. Focusing mode switch is conveniently available on the left side and feels a bit stiff, but I guess it's done again to prevent from shifting by accident. I do not really like the set of buttons to the left of the screen, but everyone's been doing like this back then, so meh. Now with my hands, focusing and aperture rings feel too thin, but it's coming from a compact nature of a camera, so I won't grumble about it. All in all, camera weighs just under 16 ounces or 450 grams, and it's with battery and SD card, so it's pretty lightweight. As for the screen, it was better than the competition both in size and resolution, only bested by Sony NEX introduced at the same time at Photokina. It measures at 2.8 inches with 0.46 million dots, which seems okay, but do not use it to judge the photo's critical focus. Better do it on computer or at least use the EVF, which on the other hand has 1.44 million dots and covers 100% of the frame. OVF covers 90% and has 0.5 magnification. It can provide you with all the necessary information, while EVF also can show you electronic level and image preview. The viewfinder conveniently has diopter adjuster and a responsive eye sensor. The downside is that the eyepiece is made of rubberized material, unlike plastic on newer models, so by the time it gets dry and wears off a lot. Performance-wise, it's decent, but famously slow and not necessarily in the bad meaning. Although startup time seems to be forever, I think of X100 as of any film point and shoot, like my sleek GR10 for example. It's not a quick snapper, but knowing what you are doing can give good results. Same with autofocus. Keep it in single shot and in the center of the frame, otherwise don't expect consistent results. It's worth mentioning that AF was one of the major downsides of this camera, and firmware in general sucked, just like any product being first of its kind. But Fuji addressed most of the issues via firmware updates, so if you get X100, make sure to go ahead and update it to version 2.11. Of the technicalities, you should know that the top mechanical shutter speed is 1/4000th of a second, but it's only available at f8 or less. Wide open at f2, it supports only up to 1/1000th of a second, and that is exactly the reason why you need ND filter built in. They kept it in newer models, although now we have electronic shutter available, but hey, it is need to have ND for some long exposures just in case anyway. Sensor is pre-X-Trans, but still it gives some nice resolution and something to work on in Photoshop. The lens better be stopped at least to f5.6 to get best results. At f2, this Fujinon is known to be a bit soft, especially at closer distances. Fuji X100 has a couple of flaws that show up with age, first being the infamous sticky aperture problem, when aperture blades would not operate properly when closed down. I've had this problem in my cam, so I had to replace the whole lens unit, which to be honest was a pain in the ass to disassemble. While taking apart, the other problem was fixed, viewfinder fungus, which seems to be another characteristic problem of this camera. That one was easy to clean while disassembled. Important note to those who will want to do the same: make sure to discharge flash capacitor before you go too deep inside, otherwise you'll have to answer for your sins much earlier than planned. A while ago, not long after I received my X100, I asked on my Instagram what would you like to know about this cam, so now I'll cover all the requests very quick. First of all, the low light performance. And right off the bat I must say that to me better formulation is high ISO performance. These days I don't do much night photography, but the low light shots I used to do were on a tripod at base ISO anyway, and you should do it as well. ISO goes all the way up to 6400, but there's an extended mode with 12800 for the suicidal ones. It's all relative, but to me even 6400 is good enough. JPEGs look okayish, and with some fine-tuned denoising and proper graining, it looks good. In RAW, you have even more room to work on the shot, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Important tip for everyone is not to be afraid of higher ISO. Don't try to go as low on shutter speed as possible. Noisy shots can be treated to some extent, whereas noisy shot which is also not sharp, that's a real waste. So dial in higher ISO but make the photo sharp and focused. A separate talk about low light shooting should be devoted to flash. Since we have here a leaf shutter, forget about your flagship beast slow sync speeds. X100 can sync flash at any speed without cutting power. So in low light, flash is gonna be a great companion for you on this camera, considering that white balance is good even when flash mixes in. It does also give you some great results in slow synchro mode. Combining with ND filter and wide open aperture, you can experiment to whatever extent you want. For those who are interested, compared to X-Trans, without a doubt it looks inferior, even compared to X100S. You can compare different X-Trans sensors on DP review, files just look better. A bit cleaner, a bit more contrasty, subjectively better color gradation, but it should come as no surprise, cause new tech is always better. Even though X100 doesn't have X-Trans, it still has Velvia, Astia, Provia and monochrome film simulations. I'm really missing classic chrome, since it's my favorite one, but Astia fits most scenarios, so whatever. Comparing to modern X-Trans on my X Pro 3, you can definitely see that the color looks a bit more pastel, especially those blues, but the image overall is more contrasty on X Pro 3. These are both Astia JPEGs, straight out of camera, shot with the same focal length, aperture and color temperature. To the naked eye, both look like Astia, and considering the JPEG tweaks available, both cameras can be set to match. And by the way, X100 RAW files do not support film simulations option in Capture One Pro, so suffer bitches. Also some asked to compare X100 to later X100 models and X Pro 1. Looking at the whole lineup all the way to X100V, I think the best value for the price you'll get with X100T. It has a beloved early 16 megapixel X-Trans sensor, much better LCD, fast electronic shutter, classic chrome, and is the lightest of the five. X100F just adds acros, if you care about black and white, a bump in resolution and battery life, as well as better autofocus. Of course, the latest X100V bests at about everything, but it's the heaviest and the most expensive one accordingly. With the original X100 you get some experience, but for the lowest price possible, and I'll tell you later why it matters. As for X Pro 1, actually I own one, known to some of you as X Project, and let me tell you, these cameras are completely different. And I can sum it up only to one thing: lens. If you're okay to stick to just 23 f2, go for X100, period. Carrying X Pro 1 with 23 f2 for the same reasons you would carry X100 is surely unlogical. While technically they are pretty much comparable, bigger body and interchangeable lenses really ought for more professional work, if you can say so. The last request I want to fulfill is whether X100 is still a viable travel camera, and it is somewhat hard to answer. On one hand, it is most definitely meant to be one. It's small and light, while being quite capable of delivering quality shots. On the other hand, I took it on my trip to Tibetan mountains recently, and there you understand all the difficulties you encounter. First of all, it is not weather sealed, and let's be honest, it is old, thus fragile. Tossing it in the bag or on your neck with a chance of seriously bumping it into something can bring you some problems, since these things are expensive to repair. The other problem is really the practicality. It is not a cheap or better camera compared to some others. My G1X with zoom lens came out a few years later, but is twice cheaper. My point is that for travel, you can definitely find some better options, like for instance that same Canon G1X, Panasonic LX100 or Sony RX100 Mark III. Being of the same price or cheaper, they are all newer cameras overall with good zoom lenses and small size. So why would you buy one? Let's get back to my point why experiencing X100 for cheap matters. With street photography on rise and more people having to leave film complex because of newest cameras like X100V, Ricoh GR3 or even Leica Q make sense as a main body for street photographers. But the original X100 surely fits more as a second camera or so-called B-cam. It fits perfectly for certain scenarios, and it's great if you have one, but rocking it full-time is not reasonable. Let's put it this way, would I love to have a classic 1967 Mercedes 300 SE? F yeah! But would I drive it on a daily basis? Surely not. It's old, slow, fragile and prone to break-in at any moment. But would I still kill to have one solely for experience? Same with X100. The joy of use and experience make it a great companion to your main camera. If you're into these kind of things, you won't regret. But if you're more like, it's not sharp, the viewfinder is so stupid, fake Leica, blah blah blah, hate those dials, well, off then! Ask your parents to get you latest Sony or Canon for Christmas and stop harassing normal people. Now, talking about me, I got this camera with the sole purpose of trying to get used to 35mm equivalent lens. Since it is not detachable, I wanted to force myself to use it. And after all this time, I can clearly see why journalistic photography revolves around 35mm. It is more close to our eyesight view than the commonly known 50mm. That is, for something right in front of me, 35mm was perfect to capture exactly what I saw. Unfortunately, for what I shoot, there are not so many instances when I want to shoot exactly what I see. So I either had to give up the shot or crop a lot in post. And it was 12 megapixels on board, it's like that shaving guy on TikTok. Therefore, I decided to just give it up and leave the idea of 35mm lens forever. Sorry, we're just not meant to be together. As for X100, I don't have a clear idea, should I sell it or not. After all, I need to have something with me for my next Like a Buddies meetup.